Morning. We'd like to welcome you to another edition of the Sunday School Review. This week's Sunday School lesson is entitled Weeds Among the Wheat, and it's taken from the book of Matthew, the 13th chapter, verses 24 through 30, and verses 36 through 43. We are again back in the book of Matthew, and this is another parable. This is the second parable that Jesus is telling to the multitude regarding the kingdom of heaven. So he's teaching about the kingdom of heaven. This lesson here is a continuation of last week's lesson. So the setting is the same. Jesus is on a boat. The multitude is standing by the seashore. Okay, and this lesson here, just like last week's lesson, has two parts. The first part is verses 24 through 30 of the 13th chapter of Matthew, and it is introducing the parable. As I said, this is the second parable. So the first part of the lesson, verses 24 through 30, is introducing the parable. Okay, and the second part of the lesson is verses 36 through 43, and it is explaining the parable. Okay, the parable explained. Okay, so again, as I said, the setting is the same as last week. The author is Matthew, and Matthew was one of the 12. And as I said last week, Matthew was a tax collector, okay? And tax collectors was a prosperous business, okay? And Matthew gave it all up to follow Jesus, okay? He gave up his lucrative tax collector's business to follow Jesus. And he, as I said, became one of the 12. Okay, now let's go into our second parable here, and it starts at verse 24. Another parable put he forth unto them, saying, the kingdom of heaven is likened unto a man which sowed good seed in his field. Okay, so he's still talking about something that the people can identify with, okay? Talking about sowing, planting, okay? So the first verse, which is 24, said, the kingdom of heaven is like unto a man which sowed good seed in his field. 25. But while men slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat and went his way. Okay, let's explain 24 and 25. So he said, this is, again, a parable about the kingdom of heaven. What is the kingdom of heaven like? And in verse 24 said, good seed, the man sowed good seed in his field. So the seed was good, okay, in his field. Now the second part of the lesson is going to explain the parable, but let's just look at the parable. So the man went out and sowed good seed in his field. 25 says, but while men slept, his enemy, which is, in this case, which the enemy is Satan. the enemy came and sowed tares, corrupt seed, among the wheat, and went his way. Now, the enemy, as I said, is the devil, Satan. So Satan is always at work. Okay. And many times we know he does his best work at night. So while men slept, the enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat and went on his way. Now, tares are worthless. They're useless. It's weeds. Okay, that's what tares are. Weeds. Okay. Now let's look at 26 and 27. It says 2 crops. Okay. But when the blades were sprung up, when the blade was sprung up and brought forth fruit, then appeared the tares also. So the servant of the householder, that is the owner, came and said unto him, Sir, didst not thou sow good seed in thy field, from which then has it tares? Okay, so the servant says to the owner, well, isn't it true you sowed good seed? Why is the tares here? Okay, let's go to 20. That's 26 and 27. Let's go to 28. And he said unto them, an enemy has done this. You knew right away, an enemy has done this. The servant said unto him, wilt thou then that we go out and gather them up? Let's go to 29 through 30 here. But he said, nay, no. Lest while ye gather up the tares, ye root up also the wheat with them. Now here's the key verse, which is verse 30. Here's the key verse. Let both grow together until the harvest. And in time of the harvest, I will say to the reapers, gather ye therefore first the tares, and bind them in bones to burn them, but gather the wheat into my barn. So, the key verse is, let them grow together. Now, there's a reason for that, and we're going to talk about it a little bit here, though. Okay, so in the initial stages, it's very difficult to determine the wheat from the tares. They are very similar. Okay, and what he's saying is that if you try to root them out now, first of all, it's very difficult in the early stages to tell which is the wheat and which is the tares. Okay, so in the process of going out, ripping out the tares, you could accidentally rip out some of the wheat. Okay, and then you could mistakenly think that a tare is wheat and leave it. Okay, because as I said, it's difficult. They are very similar, okay, to each other in the early stages. It's only when the wheat matures that you're going to be able to determine that. And second of all, okay, it's not your job, okay? You need to stay in your lane. It's not your job to separate the wheat from the tares. That's not your responsibility, okay? It says, in the time of the harvest. When is the harvest? The harvest is the end of the world, or the final judgment. And secondly, that's not your responsibility. That's no, he said in 30, in the time of the harvest, that is in the final judgment, the last day, I will say to the reapers, gather first the tares, okay? I'm not assigning that responsibility to you, okay? That's not your job, to rip out the tares. And as I said, in the process, you may rip out some of the wheat, and you may leave some tares thinking that it's wheat, because that can only be determined once it matures. Now, in the initial stages, you know, it's looking good. The tares are looking fine, just like the wheat. Okay, but only when it matures are you going to be able to determine what is the wheat, which is the good, and what is the tares or the weeds. And that's the parable explained. And so the key verse here, or the key point in this first outline, is let them grow together. Okay, let them grow together. And in the final judgment, the end of the world, I will separate the wheat from the tares. Okay, that's the first part of this parable introduced. Now, let's go to our second outline, which explains this parable. And as I said, the second outline takes us from 36 to 43. Okay, now the very first verse, which is 36, it shifts gears here. Okay, now let's read the first clause of 36. Then Jesus sent the multitude away. Remember what I said last week? Jesus was in the boat teaching. The multitude was standing on the shore. And the first parable last week, we were talking about the sower went out. Now we're talking about the tares being sown among the wheat. And so the multitude is listening. Just as I said, this is the second parable. Now, at this point, he sends the multitude away, according to verse 36. Then Jesus sends the multitude away and went into the house. He obviously get off the boat. Now he goes into the house. And his disciples came unto him saying, so when Jesus explains this parable, he's explaining it not to the multitude, but to his disciples. His disciples want to know, what does this mean? Can you elaborate on this? So let's read 36 again. Jesus sent the multitude away and went into the house, and his disciples came unto him, saying, declare unto us the parable of the tares of the field. What does this mean? Can you elaborate? So he's explaining this parable, unlike last week, he's explaining this parable not to the multitude, but to his disciples, because they asked him, can you explain this to us? Please explain this to us. Okay, and this is where 37 takes up, and he's going to explain the parable. He answered and said unto them, that is his disciples, as we said, he that soweth the good seed is the Son of Man. Okay, that's the sower of the good seed. Verse 38, the field is the world. Okay, the world. The field is the world. The good seed are the children of the kingdom, but the tares are the children of the wicked one. So you remember we're back in 30 said, let them grow together. Now we as Christians, we're not isolated from the world, okay, from the unbelievers. We all in this, as they say, we all in this thing together. You know, we say, well, once you become a believer, you go on a separate planet. No, we all on the same planet, in the same environment, okay? So, the field is the world. The good seed are the children of the kingdom. So the children of the kingdom are in the midst of the world. The tares are the children of the wicked one. So the wicked one, Satan, the devil, he comes and sows corrupt seed, tares, okay? You will find that they may be looking good, sounding good, they're talking good, okay? But they are the corrupt seed, okay? So he said, the field is the world, the good seed of the children of the kingdom, but the tares are the children of the wicked one, the devil, Satan. Okay, now let's go to 39. The enemy, this spells it out plain. The enemy that sowed them is the devil. The harvest, as I said before, the harvest is the end of the world, and the reapers are the angel. Okay, so as I said before, the harvest, he said, let them go together until the harvest, that is the end of the world, the final judgment. Okay, the reapers are the angel. That's their responsibility. He's going to instruct. The Lord's going to instruct the angels to do the gathering, the separate, the gathering. Okay, not you. Stay in your lane. That's not your responsibility. You don't have the ability to do the separating, or as we say, the judging. That's the Lord. Okay, that's his call. Okay, now let's go to 40. As therefore the tares are gathered and burned in the fire. As I said, at once they are mature, you can determine the wheat from the tare. So the tares are gathered and burned. Pretty straightforward. Burned in the fire. So it will be at the end of this world, the final judgment, the end of the world. The tares, the weeds, okay, which are useless, will be gathered and burned in the fire. Not by you, but by the reapers based on the Lord's instructions. Okay, that's his call. Let's go to 42 and 40, 41 and 42. The Son of Man shall send forth his angels. Let's read it again. The Son of Man shall send forth his angels, and they shall gather out of his kingdom all that offend and which do iniquity, and cast them in the furnace of fire. There shall be wailing and gnashing of teeth. Is the Lord's call, not anyone else. This is plain English. This is straightforward. The Son of Man shall send forth his angels, and they shall gather out of his kingdom all that offend. and them which do iniquity, and shall cast them in the furnace of fire. There will be wailing and gnashing of teeth. That's his call. No one else. Okay? We are not qualified to do this judging or separating. Okay? It's the Lord. Let the Lord do. He's the one that's he's the one that's qualified to do it. It's as simple as that. It's not qualified. You wouldn't get have a house wired and call someone that's not qualified. The first thing you want to know, are you licensed? Are you qualified to do this work? And clearly, we are not qualified to do this work, okay? Let the Lord do it, okay? So, that's 42. Let's go to 43, which is our last verse. Then shall the righteous shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Who has ears, let him hear. Okay, so as I said, this is Jesus explaining the last part, 36 to 40, is Jesus explaining this parable to his disciples. Okay, the question was, the servant asked the owner. Okay, the servant asked the owner, or it says the householder or the owner, do you want me to go out and pluck up the tares? No. Let them grow together until harvest, and I will do the separating. I mean, he told him that in the first part of the lesson, but in the second part of the lesson, where Jesus explains this to his disciples, explained the characters one by one to his disciples. So this is the second parable about the kingdom of heaven. This is Jesus teaching about the kingdom of heaven. And this is our lesson for today, is weeds among the wheat. And the idea is Jesus instructs them to let them grow together. And in the end, in the final judgment, at the end of the world, I will do the separating. And we'd like to thank you for watching today. We ask you to join us next week for another edition of the Sunday School Review. Thank you.